Today I'll go over some general principles to keep in mind when decomposing characters. First, simplification. Use the fewest number of radicals possible to represent a character. The first two strokes in the character ba are a horizontal line and left falling stroke. But this is already an auxiliary shape represented by the radical yet, so we use one radical to represent it rather than two. Larger radical before smaller radical. If there are two possible ways to decompose a character with the same amount of radicals, choose the combination that starts with a larger radical or auxiliary shape. In this case, the top part of the character Qing can be represented either like this or like this. However, this is the decomposition that we use because the first radical takes up more space than in this example. Next, maintain distinct sections. Keep radicals and auxiliary shapes contained and avoid crossover. So in this case, we can see that we divide the character into radicals from top to bottom, and each radical has its own unique section. We would not decompose it like this, because in this example, the last radical is overlapping the rest of the radicals. And then for this character, it's a similar idea. In this decomposition, the cross is overlapping the rest of the radicals. In this case, we can see that using this decomposition results in needing to use more radicals. But in this case, maintaining distinct sections takes precedent over reducing the number of radicals. If there are multiple ways to deconstruct a character, then we prioritize the one that maintains the turning or corner stroke as seen in handwriting. In the character Ji, this is the corner stroke, so we decompose it as a dot, the corner stroke, and the final stroke, rather than a crown, a left falling line, and a final stroke. In this case, preserving the corner stroke takes precedent over the previous rule of larger radical before smaller radical. For the character Li, we preserve this corner stroke, so we decompose it as a turning hook stroke rather than just a straight hook stroke. For the character Yao, we see there's a turning stroke here, so we represent this part using an auxiliary shape and the bottom as the cross, rather than one horizontal line and the cross. For the last example, we see a corner stroke here, so we represent it using this auxiliary shape. Next is the overlapping rule. This is an exception to the previous rule of maintaining distinct sections. For certain characters, radicals crossing over is permitted if it reduces the number of radicals needed, or if the character is otherwise difficult to decompose. This is mostly seen in characters with enclosure shapes, such as these. The character Joy is decomposed as Yat, Tou, Yu, and we can see that this is the enclosure shape. The character Si is decomposed as Sa, Yu. Again, we can see the enclosure shape here. For the character Dai, we notice that this is the enclosure shape, and we decompose it as Gam, Gong, Zhong, Zhong. The character Yong is decomposed as Guo, Zhong, Yu, and not Guo, Zhong, Yu, Cao. For our last example, the character Wa is decomposed as Ya, Yat, Ya, Sa. But note that this rule doesn't apply to any of these shapes shown here, because they already have strokes inside of them. So for the character shown here, we follow the earlier rule of maintaining distinct sections. Here are the practice examples for today. Try to figure out the Cangjie codes for the following characters. In the next video, I will talk about character exceptions and the X, Z, and wildcard keys. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment. Thanks for watching.